Hi everybody. So today I wanted to go over a new lens that I just purchased. It is the Sigma 35mm f1.4 DG HSM lens. I wanted to go over my thoughts on the lens, my experience shooting the lens, go over some sample images, as well as my conclusion on what I think of this lens. So let me go over some of the specs of this lens. I have it written down here. So Sigma, apparently they're going through a new branding phase. They're going through, they're re-announcing this new professional line of lenses, which is that they're branded with letters. So they have the A series, which stands for art, which is what this is. This is the first of the art series lenses. They've got the C series, which I believe stands for contemporary. And then they have the S series for sports. And they're supposed to be professional quality lenses. And I feel this lens definitely is a professional quality lens. This lens has the hypersonic motor, so it's definitely quiet. You can barely hear it. I have a sample. I'll put up a clip and show you how quiet this lens is. It's fairly fast focusing. It's not lightning quick, but it's fast enough for this focal range, I believe. And from what I've seen from other reviews, it's not any faster or slower than the Canon or the Nikon version. This lens has a floating internal focusing system. It has 4 SLD elements. So the lens, let me backtrack a little bit. The lens, it has 13 elements in 11 groups. Now 4 of these elements are SLD elements, which are special low dispersion elements, which help correct for chromatic aberration. That's when you see green or purple fringing in high contrast areas in your background when you see out of focus elements. That's called chromatic aberration. And it also includes what the Sigma calls an FLD glass, which is another, low dispersion element. It simulates the effect of fluorite glass, but it's much cheaper. So fluorite glass, just for you that don't know, those are the really nice elements that you typically see in microscopes and telescopes. So this has 4 SLD elements for special low dispersion. It's like equal to Nikon's ED element. And this also has 1 fluorite element plus 1 aspherical element. So it's a pretty complex lens. Also, it's got an angle of view of 63.4 degrees. It has 9 rounded aperture blades, so for better, creamier bokeh. The f-stop ranges from f1.4 at the widest end to f16 when it's stopped all the way down. It's got a minimum focusing distance of 11.8 inches or 30 centimeters. It has a filter size of 67 millimeters, which is the same as the Nikon. It weighs 665 grams or 1.5 pounds or 1.5 pounds. And the Sigma makes this for mounts for the Nikon, Canon, Sony, Pentax, and of course their own Sigma brand cameras. So talk a little bit about this lens. The build quality, first off, when I first picked it up out of the box, I was like, whoa, this box is heavy. It just feels solid. It feels precise. It feels like there's precision built in this lens. All it has on the lens is it has a nice, smooth, rubberized focusing ring. So you can focus all the way from infinity to its longest focusing or closest focusing distance. And when it gets to the stop, the lens will keep turning, but it won't focus anymore. It has 1 switch here. Autofocus. It's a manual focus right here, and you can override the autofocus as well. So in comparison to the Nikon lens, it has the same aperture range. They both go from 1.4 to 16. They both have 9 rounded aperture blades. They both have a silent motor, and they're both 67 millimeters, and they both have the same minimum focusing distance. One of the differences from this lens and the Nikon 35-1.4 lens is the Nikon lens is weather sealed. This lens is not weather sealed. This lens also, the Nikon lens also has nanocrystal coating, which prevents it from flaring. This lens does not have that coating. I think the nanocrystal coating is specific to Nikon. However, I did try to make this lens flare several times, and it will not flare. So it doesn't need that coating. It's really resistant to flare, which is great if you're not looking for that. I can go either way with flare. I have some lenses that flare, that produce kind of cool flare, and others that don't. This one, just letting you guys know, doesn't flare hardly at all, or actually never. Now, a couple things that the Sigma has over the Nikon is it weighs 65 grams more. It has a metal construction. Just has a better look and feel. It looks like a modern lens. It's nice and sleek. It's got that piano black finish. It's a rubberized focus ring. It feels nice and hefty, and it just feels good, and it looks good on the camera. Also, it has more low dispersion elements. The Nikon version doesn't have any low dispersion elements. It has one aspherical element and then the rest regular glass. This has 4 low dispersion elements plus 1 FLD element. So all of those together combine to help with the chromatic aberration, or help dissipate the chromatic aberration. One of the main things also is the price. This lens currently is going for $899, which is $720 cheaper than the Nikon version. It is $430 cheaper than the Canon version, and it is $599 cheaper than the Sony version. So for the price itself, this lens is an absolute bargain. Okay, here's what the lens sounds like when it's focusing and how fast it focuses. And for comparison, here's what the Nikon 24-70 sounds like when it's focusing and how fast it focuses. Now remember, my microphone is directly above the lenses, so the sound is definitely being exaggerated. Both lenses are actually pretty quiet. Now here's an example of the lens vignetting. Now I took a picture of a blank wall from apertures from f1.4 to f8. As you can see, by f2.8 the vignetting is almost gone, then by f4 it's pretty much completely gone. Now wide angle lenses, especially fast wide angle lenses, you'll typically find vignetting. You'll find this also with the Canon and the Nikon versions as well. Okay, in this test, I put some Christmas lights in the background and started focusing and defocusing the lens just using the focus ring on the lens. And then I started moving the lens around, up and down, just so you can have an idea of the type of bokeh balls that you can get from this lens when you get those tiny sources of light, those points of light in the background. See what kind of effect that this lens will give you. Okay, here are some just regular old images I shot with the lens. They're nothing special, but what I did is I shot the lens mostly at 1.4 just to show you guys how sharp the lens is wide open. I'm really happy and pretty impressed at how sharp and how much detail this lens can capture when it's fully wide open. When typically wide open is when most lenses are its weakest optically. So in conclusion, and my final thoughts on this lens is I couldn't be any more happier than this lens. This lens is great. It looks and feels like a professional lens. It handles like one. The image quality is top notch. Everything is sharp, beautiful bokeh. It's great. You know, I've never used a Nikon 35mm 1.4G lens. I hear it's an awesome lens. But from all the reviews that I've read, but comparing this lens and the Canon version and the Nikon version, it says that this lens is actually better optically than the Nikon or the Canon. So I don't understand why anyone would want to buy or spend $720 more on the Nikon version when you can get this version for less and the optical quality is better. I'm just really impressed with what Sigma has done. I've never typically looked at the stuff that they do because I typically go right to the Nikon glass because I just typically believe that they're better. And then as I do my research, I find out more other stuff. But when this lens popped on the grid, I definitely wanted to take a second look at it. And I couldn't be any more happier than this lens. Anyway, if you guys have any questions about this lens or maybe some of the other gear that I have, please leave them at the comments below. Thanks for watching.